Wrecking Ball has been in a rough spot since the beginning of Overwatch 2. Each attempt the developers make to try to mitigate the problems facing Wrecking Ball fails. This is because Wrecking Ball has too low of a skill ceiling. I know that sounds insane. Wrecking Ball is an incredibly difficult hero that requires both extreme mechanical skill as well as impressive knowledge of the game. However, there is more to a skill ceiling than just the skill expression. There's two factors: skill expression and impact. Now, I need you to define what is skill expression, what is impact. Skill expression is how a player demonstrates their proficiency in the game, typically through mechanics like aim and movement, or through knowledge like positioning, matchups, timing, predictions, and the skin they chose to wear. Impact is a difficult thing to measure, but is typically reducible to the threat of an elimination, changing the game from a 5v5 to a 5v4. Impact can be expressed in the Tracer one clipping someone, but can also be expressed by a Widowmaker existing on the right sideline without hitting a single shot. This threat of an elimination can result in an elimination, but the impact is that potential of the elimination. So then, what is a skill floor and what is a skill ceiling? A skill floor is the minimum amount of skill expression to have an impact on the game. Examples of very low skill floors are heroes like Torbjorn or Moira, in which aim, cooldown management, and positioning are not required to have an impact on the game. Examples of high skill floor heroes would be Zenyatta and Widowmaker, which require a base level of aim and positioning to have an impact on the game. What is a skill ceiling? A skill ceiling is the maximum amount of skill expression that has an impact on the game. Generally, the goal is for this ceiling to be unattainable. Examples of heroes with a high skill ceiling are Tracer and Winston. These are heroes in which timing, positioning, cooldown management, aim, and movement are all extremely impactful on the game and impossible to master. Heroes with a low skill ceiling would be Moira and Mauga. These are heroes in which the impact of the hero does not continue to increase relative to the skill of a player. Moira is extremely forgiving in both aim and movement, as aim is not required, allowing the Moira to strafe and dodge and focus on not getting shot. And Moira is very forgiving in cooldown management and positioning, due to the strength of the cooldowns and their quick recovery. Players are able to reach a level of play on Moira in which improving their skill expression will not result in more of an impact on the game. Why is all that important? It is generally accepted in game design that for a game to be both fun and rewarding, it should have a low skill floor and a high skill ceiling. In other words, the barrier to entry should be easy. New players should feel like they can pick up the game, and the room for growth should be seemingly infinite. If a player can continue to improve, the game should reward that ability to improve. A great example of this is a game that has been around for eons: chess. Anybody can learn how the chess pieces work in a couple of minutes. However, mastery of this game requires lifetimes and literal millennia of studying. This game has been around since the 6th century, and we humans are still bad at it compared to what our computers can do, and our computers are still improving. So, how does Overwatch fare in all this? When Overwatch initially came out, it was highly regarded, in part due to its low skill ceiling and high skill floor. People wanted to play it and felt rewarded doing so, and as the game continued to develop, it not only lowered its skill floor, but also raised its skill ceiling. However, people still soured on it. This was due to the balance philosophy of the game being lower the skill floor with a hero and raise the skill ceiling with another. This idea that the overall balance of the skill of the game is not an individual responsibility of the hero, but rather a responsibility of the entire roster, is what killed the game. As the people at the reins of the game have changed, it seems that the philosophy might be changing as well. In the meantime, we should keep driving home. It's not the game as a whole that needs a healthy skill curve, but also the individual heroes that make up the game. Wrecking Ball isn't one of these heroes with a healthy skill curve. Wrecking Ball has too high of a skill floor and too low of a skill ceiling because of his impact relative to his skill expression. Wrecking Ball is the most mobile hero in the game, one of the beefiest heroes in the game, is able to quite frustratingly displace his enemies from the positions they chose to take. For these reasons, players are terrified of a time when Wrecking Ball is the tank dominating their games. Where Wrecking Ball has his impact is that he has more hit points than most of the roster, and a lot more hit points. Using his mobility and displacement, he is able to isolate a target in which he has an advantage due to his hit points and provide a threat of eliminating that target. However, the skill required to achieve this threat is very high. And there are points in which the execution of any engagement doesn't matter. Wrecking Ball simply cannot threaten an elimination. Wrecking Ball has no ability to counteract crowd control, or CC, and no way to cut through the amount of healing a target can receive. Compare that to the other dive tanks that should be similar to Wrecking Ball in playstyle, and you will see Wrecking Ball is alone in those weaknesses. This lowers Wrecking Ball's skill ceiling relative to other dive tanks, as Wrecking Ball will reach a point in which the expression of a player's skill does not change the impact that player has on the game. This point happens much faster than it would on a hero like Winston or D.Va, who have the tools to counteract CC and healing, allowing the player on these heroes to express their skill in a way that continues to have an impact on the game. How many Wrecking Ball players do you know of? Probably couldn't name very many. How about Overwatch players that can play Wrecking Ball well? I doubt that number is different. This is because Wrecking Ball has a very high skill floor. His mechanics with grapple and pile driver are not very intuitive, and misuse of his adaptive shields is quite punishing. This, his inability to favorably trade blows with any tank, and the niche playstyle all inning on backline assassinations make this hero very complicated and very difficult to have an impact with. The biggest perpetrator of raising his skill floor is not his movement or playstyle, though. It's his primary fire. These things are useless. Single target damage that requires amazing tracking as well as a very short magazine size makes even proficient aim gamers not even bother with it. Wrecking Ball cannot have a powerful primary fire due to his impact coming from other places in his kit. This is very much raises the skill floor because a player is going to have no impact trying to use his primary fire as the threat, and proficient gameplay requires exceptional tracking in very demanding situations. Now, I'm not new to discussions in Overwatch. I understand that whenever we talk about the shortcomings of any tank in Overwatch 2, the conversation of whether or not the game should be 6v6 comes up, allowing another tank to compensate for the weaknesses of a single tank. For this video, I do not want to entertain the idea of 6v6 because I cannot picture a world in which 6v6 is possible if nobody wants to play tank. The idea that players will come back to tank after we switch back to 6v6 is putting the cart before the horse. We need to make playing tank more attractive before entertaining the idea of two tanks. So, what do I suggest? Hey, listen, devs. I really appreciate having this silly little guy in this game, and I love that he has an extremely niche playstyle and mechanics. I know you guys just tried to raise his skill ceiling and lower his skill floor, and you did, just marginally. I love the quality of life changes, keep giving them, but even more mobility and even more survivability is not going to improve the impact accessible with skill expression. Giving the shields to the Tracer is cool and all, but that Tracer would rather there be any other dive tank ability helping them with that dive. Being able to travel 70 miles per hour is cool, but I didn't have any problem getting to where I needed to be before. I suggest redistributing the power budget of Wrecking Ball from his survivability to his damage. Wrecking Ball should be able to threaten an elimination by merit of his damage rather than having more HP to trade. I don't have any hard numbers for you, but allowing his primary fire to be an actual threat will not only allow him to have the chance to cut through the healing, but also allow him to have more of an impact on the enemy tank. This lowers his skill floor and raises his skill ceiling by allowing Wrecking Ball to have more impact on the game. Another thing that I think needs to be addressed is the tank passive reducing knockback. This passive impacts Wrecking Ball very harshly, preventing him from meaningfully displacing any tanks. I think we should look at a tank's knockback superseding the passive, allowing tanks to knock back opposing tanks as they would any other hero. In conclusion, Wrecking Ball has too low of a skill ceiling because a player will not have an impact despite their expression of more skill, and the skill floor is too high, barring more players from enjoying the hero. A game should have a rewarding skill curve expressed by a low skill floor and a high skill ceiling, but even a hero should have a rewarding skill curve. If you like what I had to say, or you didn't like what I had to say, let me know in the comments. Or you can come chat with me live at twitch.tv/HilmDustin. Anyways, I will continue to try to improve at Wrecking Ball despite the meaningfulness of the task, as the struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy.